This picture that you're looking at now is a picture that was seized when that search warrant was executed at his house. This next photo is another picture that was seized at his house, and this is his son watering the plants. The reason that we wanted to bring your attention to this, and I think there was a question earlier where this was being discussed, it's law enforcement's belief that it's not the legitimate people in this program that are the problem. They're doing their best. They're trying to comply with the law and the act to the best of their ability based on the information that they're given, and that if they're trying to be responsible, they're not going to expose their children to these grow sites and marijuana laying around, whereas the drug dealers, the people that are in there illicitly, are more apt to do that, like in this particular case. The other thing that law enforcement is beginning to deal with more with these grow sites is across the country we're having a lot more discussions about safety when we respond to them, process them, and take down these plants, because we're starting to have examples of law enforcement getting sick. So we're now, just like we did with Clan Labs with site safety officers, you're starting to see some classes and some training and gear that how we can process these because of the molds, the mildews, the funguses, the insecticides, the varying chemicals that are used in these grow sites. So, but again, the focus of this was to demonstrate that if we're able to root out the level of abuse that's in this act now, then maybe we wouldn't see so much of this. Some examples of just the drug trafficking. Again, in the interest of time, I could bring in the Drug Task Force commanders and others, and they could tell you stories all day long. But here's a case where Utah State Police, and this is marijuana that's, when we were talking about where's it going, well, this is an example. It's going out of state. Utah picks off 13 pounds. Pays $47,000 for it. The individual cooperates and tells us who he bought it from, which results in us doing a knock and talk at this person's residence, and while the officers are there, 2 or 3 other people come to the house while the detectives are there to try and buy marijuana from him. The next example is a caregiver. This person's a caregiver for 2. This person was very cooperative with us, at least initially, in terms of telling us this is how we do it. He had 15 pounds, and law enforcement had been aware of him for a while. It just took a while before we could make a case. He had 15 pounds of bulk marijuana at the time. He admitted to selling 80 to 90 pounds per year, anywhere from 3,200 to 4,200 a pound, depending on whether the marijuana was coming from an indoor grow or an outdoor grow. And he was recruiting 18 or 19-year-olds to get caregiver cards as well to help him sell. The thing that he said is with the 2 patients that he had, he said one patient he never gave a single drop of marijuana to, and the other one he just gave him an ounce or 2 every once in a while. He simply had the card so that he could deal drugs. The next is a caregiver that was arrested after arranging to sell 50 pounds for $125,000. This person also happened to run a nonprofit medical marijuana organization. And the last example here is was a card holder that was attempting to smuggle 67 pounds to Minnesota. We worked that case on both ends, and both here on the Oregon side and the Minnesota side, and ended up with another 80,000. And the source of that marijuana is a medical marijuana card holder here in Oregon. And we're starting to see, again, more. This is happening more and more and more in our investigations. We were talking about caregivers a little bit earlier in terms of there's no limitation in the current act as to how many patients can be assigned to a particular caregiver. So it's important to go back and look at what the act actually says about what the roles and responsibility of a caregiver is, and that is that you have significant responsibility for managing the well-being of a patient. Again, significant responsibility for managing the well-being of a patient. So we looked at this, and there's a person in the program that's a patient for himself. He's a grower for 3 others, and he's a caregiver for 26 patients. And I guess the question we have is, how is that possible? How can you possibly provide, be responsible for the significant responsibility for managing the well-being of a person, and be growing all this marijuana and being a patient who has a debilitating condition yourself? And this is the grow site that's associated with this person. He's very open about showing it. We fly over it every year, and they wave, and this is a legal grow site.
It is a legal
grow site. They have enough cards to support that grow. So you have multiple people at that site that are designated as persons responsible for the grow site.
Okay, so we said that a grower could only grow for 4 patients.
Correct.
But we didn't say that that growers could get together and grow. We didn't say that. Okay, and
sure.
we didn't limit the number of caregivers. Okay.
The thing that you think about, this caregiver at any time, if he was driving down the road, for 26 times 24 ounces, that's how much that person could legally possess at any time, anywhere in the state of Oregon, as currently as the law exists today. We get asked about how many violations statewide are you seeing, and I think, back in 2005 when the meth bill came through, I think everybody realized how difficult it is to collect good data, and there was an effort to pull out some of the drugs and give them their own statute so that we could get a better idea of tracking this. We have no way of tracking medical marijuana violations. When you're either in or you're out, and when you're outside the act, you just fall into the regular possession, manufacture, delivery of marijuana. So when those arrests show up, we have no way of knowing which ones of those were medical or are non-medical related. But what we can do is we can look at some snapshots of some data from 2 or 3 different places so that we can at least get an idea there and draw some conclusions. Down in Douglas County, this is a sketch. This happens. These are all these pins represent sites where violators were prosecuted, and there are 50 of them since January of 2006 along the I-5 corridor. Mostly, it looks like. In OSP, what we did is we also internally have a difficult time with doing that. But what we did is we looked at all of our marijuana cases since 2006, just the ones that involved manufacture and delivery. We didn't look at any of the possession cases. 19% of all of our marijuana investigations, whether it's CS or DCS crime, involve out-of-compliance card holders. If you look in Washington County, there's they have a multi-agency drug team up there. It doesn't count any of the other agencies. Just that team alone had 26 out-of-compliance OMMA growth sites just in the first 10 months of 2008. And then we also, another source of information is Department of Justice does a lot of analytical work, but one of the things that law enforcement can do is there's what we call crop seizure reports. So when we come across a grow that's any kind of illegal marijuana grow, we fill out this form in terms of where it's at, how many plants and whatnot, and they check a box as to whether or not it was an out-of-compliance card, a marijuana grow site. For 2007, 18% of all of the grow site crop seizure reports that they received were out-of-compliance card holders. And again, keep in mind that that's not mandatory reporting. That's just the agencies that are sending that information into DOJ.
Okay, we're going to have to stop now. We have to be on the floor in 15 minutes.